or Monday.
All right. So before we begin our study, we'll acknowledge what Scripture says. Scripture says, "You'll eat and be satisfied, and you'll bless Adonai your God for the good land He has given you." So let's do that. Abba, we have eaten and we are satisfied. We thank you for the land. It's in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So once again, this is the portion we read today. Here are the readings. The first verse. Lifting him be literally before their faces. So it brings us to the question. According to the traditional count of Rambam, how many mitzvot or commandments are there in this week's Torah portion? Note that the numbers are not in numerical order in the listing there.
I want to say 66, because it just seemed like there was a lot.
There was a lot.
Oh, I think I'm going to go with you.
Are there any other votes, or is everybody else afraid to make their selection publicly now?
If it isn't 642, it's 51. 42.
42.
Just be
Okay. 42 sounds like a good number.
Nobody's saying 51.
I said if it isn't 66, it's going to be.
She said that's her
51.
B answer.
The first and the second answer.
Mhm.
Well, sorry, folks. The first one out is 66.
Oh, we were bad.
It just seemed like there was a lot. I started counting after about the 11th one. I'm like, shoot, I didn't count the first one. I counted about 9 of them. I said, forget it. There were too many.
So next one out is 42. So it is 51. That is correct. Good
Wow.
job.
Yeah, there was a lot.
There was a lot.
We're not going to go through all of them this time. Go through some of them, some are more than others, I think. This Torah portion is sometimes called the Torah of the Hebrew bondservant, and you can see why at the beginning of the portion kind of begins with that. It's written from the perspective or to the perspective of who is the person who is basically working for somebody else, not necessarily a free person. So these are the first several out of chapter 21. If his master gives him a wife and she bears him sons or daughters, the woman or children still belong to her master and shall not go out alone. So the question kind of is this. I'm sorry, he shall go out alone. What if the wife is a Hebrew or is not a Hebrew? What's the difference between the two in this case, you think?
If she's a Hebrew, she actually, at the end of the 7 years, she gets to go free or back to her parents. Or what? But if you're not a Hebrew, you don't get to go free.
So the Hebrew, right? The Hebrew doesn't ever belong to the master.
No,
It's never the master's property.
unless he chooses to make himself so.
True. That is true. But in terms of, if it was the rules would kind of be different if not different, but only difference in a short period. If for example, if the husband, the male slave marries a woman and she is a Hebrew woman and they have children, they didn't come in together, so they can't go out together necessarily. But if he's free in 2 years and she'll be free in 3 years or whatever, so they can still be married and they'll still be married after they both end their servitude. Or as you know, the individual never leaves empty-handed, so perhaps that's enough to pay the redemption price to redeem the wife and the kids as well. So there's a couple ways around just leaving, so to speak, and not leaving with your family if you've married.
Know they never really obeyed the Jubilee years and stuff.
Well, some things I think they did. It may not be the land part of it.
Well, that's what I meant with the land part, but did they do it with the Hebrews,
Yeah,
bond service?
It would be, yes, there'd be a valuation of redemption price would be, if you owe 1,000 shekels for 7 years, or for 6 years, and it'd go down by a certain amount every year. So in your 6th year, if you have enough, or somebody can purchase your freedom early, you can, pay that amount, and pay it back. So, yes.
I wonder if men said like, oh, I don't know if I want to get involved with this person, because if I get to go, they don't get to go. Or if they said, hey, I get a wife and child for a few years and I can take off and not have to take them. Like I could see that going both ways.
I'm sure any system can be deviously used for abuse,
I'm not saying all men.
She says hashtag yes.
10% men get the other 90% of bad men.
Men
What's
did think
true?
that.
Women too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know as a woman, if that were my choice, like, hey, look, at some point you might go free, but you can't take your husband or kid, I'd be like, nope, I ain't doing it, sorry. You can count me out, I'm not taking that risk. But I just wondered if men thought that as well.
Possibly, although it seems though that it would be in this culture, they would want to, if they're free and they have to, and they get to leave, that means they get to leave with something. They can go out, earn money and then redeem the price of their
Buy
wife
back.
or kids back, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about the sale of a daughter? As you
No,
see,
that makes
it's
it feel like their property.
as you see though, it's not exactly the same as you're not really selling. It's essentially like the bride price you're getting for her, because the intent is to either result in marriage to the master or his son. And so the commentary says if the neither two marries her, the Torah regards it as a betrayal of the woman who sold, the girl who sold. If one of the two chooses to marry her, the purchase price received by the father will constitute betrothal money, so the bride price. The girl goes free without payment in one of 3 ways: at the end of 6 years, upon the advent of the Jubilee year, or when her puberty begins if she is underage at the time, based on Exodus 21:11.
Because then she would be married.
So Hebrew bondmaid. This is an interesting section. That chapter 21, like 7 through 11. Here we'll have a little bit of some slides from David Wilbur here on this topic. So this is the displeasing to her master slide. That's the section about betraying her. It says broke faith. That's how the NJPS reads. Judaica Press Complete Tanakh says betrays her, literally. So broke faith or betrays her is what the person does if he doesn't actually marry her. She can be redeemed if he doesn't want to do that. So pay back whatever the bride price was. Our word is spelled lo in the text. So if you look on it's kind of fine print up there on the top line, where it's the chet in the for verse 8. If you go all the way over to the right in the middle there, where is the parentheses? It's yes, asher lo. What the question is, in terms of understanding, it's spelled as if it's lo for himself, although the spelling is lo as in no or did not. So what Ibn Ezra said was our verse indicates the master had a moral obligation to arrange for the marriage to take place. Rashi comments similarly, saying on the low part, do not designate her, for you should have designated her. should have, same kind of thing that Ibn Ezra said in terms of the moral obligation. So there's some we'll take a look at this next one, the pretty much 21:10. I think this written here where it says conjugal rights may not be the correct interpretation of this passage. Get to that in just a second. 21:10, where this word, it's the only time that, it's the only time that this word I think is used in the Hebrew text. It's the word Ola, I believe. Is that right? Is it? And it's often translated as marital rights. It's sorry, not a lot. It's the word ana, I believe is what it is. Is that right? Anata, second to last word. Second to last word for anata.
For the marital rights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think
It's the word. It's the Hebrew word is ana. The root word is ein nun he.
Yeah.
It only occurs here. Others have proposed dwelling or ointment. And I think that dwelling is probably, if you look at, what David Wilbur does make the argument that if you look at, since this is the only time this word is used in the Hebrew text of the Torah, it's hard to get a context out of it except for looking at other places used or some of the words used in the Near Eastern culture. And he'll make a case that it is mostly or more along the lines of dwelling or dwelling place versus conjugal rights.
In other words, you're not kicking her out to the barn.
Right. Those the three things you have to give her are food, clothing, and dwelling. If you don't give her that, then she's free to go.
That actually makes sense.
So we'll get to that here in just a second. Now, there is some differences here. There's some kind of odd things here in terms of the Torah of punishment of a master when he beats his slave to death. That is somewhat of a difficult passage, I think, 22, 21, 20, and 21. It doesn't seem like the slave has the same rights as everybody else. He will be punished, it says, but if he survives for a few days and then dies, he's not to be punished. So that seems a bit odd to me. This chapter 21 here as well is very heavy into what would be called today tort law, the law of damages, essentially, for actions. The Torah punishments when an ox gores a person to death, injuries caused by a pit, caused by an ox to an ox, those sort of things is tort law. It's a section of law, so that may, it's a lot of nuances to the text, and so kind of.
Well, your cistern thing is you have to have a fence around your swimming pool.
Right. There's an example of tort law. What the text tells us is if you lend a implement to someone or something, if you lend someone to someone, and if you're not there and it breaks, then the person is responsible for it. But if you the lender are there when it breaks, he's not responsible for it. And example of this, some years ago, JD and I went to the Don and Linda Thomas's place and to help put up a barn. And the shovel I brought was being used by JD, but in fact, the end of it busted off. I was there. JD was not abusing it. He was not responsible for replacing my shovel. All right, so here's the commentary. I think it's like 5 pages. Not overly long, but okay. So the passage we just read, or we're just discussing. This passage concerns the selling of a young woman to a family as intended wife for either a man or for his son, in a kind of indentured servitude vis-a-vis an arranged marriage for a family that is destitute and needs a daughter provided for. This was a common practice in the ancient Near East that the Torah permitted and regulated in the best interests of the maidservant. When a man sells his daughter as a slave, she does not. When a man sells a daughter as a slave, she shall not go out as the male slaves do. If she does not please her master, who has designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no right to sell her to a foreign people, since he has broken faith with her. If he designates her for a son, he shall deal with her as with a daughter. If he takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish her food, her clothing, or her marital rights. If he does not do these things for her, she shall go out for nothing without payment of money. And so it's really going to discuss this, if he should take another wife to himself as part of the text here. This is another passage that some people, sorry?
I was gonna say, so does that mean they can only have one wife at a time instead of?
That's what he's discussing here.
Okay.
This is another passage that some people cite to say that God approves of polygamy. After all, critics argue, the text says that if the man takes another wife, he still must provide for his first wife's needs, including her marital rights, that is, her sexual rights. The man must keep both women as wives. Oops. First, even if we assume this passage concerns polygamy, there still wouldn't be evidence that God approves of the practice, similar to what we discussed earlier in a different part of the thing. Example of case law. As Richard Davidson explains, case laws do not legitimize the activity of the case described, but only prescribe what should be done in such cases. Second, careful reading of the text reveals that this passage actually has nothing to do with polygamy at all. Let me explain. He says, when the passage speaks of the man taking another wife to himself in verse 10, many people assume this refers to another wife in addition to their maidservant. In reality, the text indicates that this is another wife instead of the maidservant. This means that verse 10 describes how the maidservant should be treated if her master takes someone else as a wife instead of her.
Which means the house would make a lot more sense than marriageable, right?
If the master decides not to marry the maidservant, then she can be redeemed, that is, bought back. Alternatively, she and the master's son could get married. If that happens, the master is to treat her not as a servant, but as his daughter. If she is not redeemed, and if she doesn't marry the master's son, and if the master decides to marry someone else, then the master is still required to meet her basic needs. If he doesn't provide what she needs, the maidservant is to be considered a free woman and can leave. Thus, the passage doesn't address polygamy. Verse 8 already tells us that the master chose not to marry the maidservant. Therefore, another wife in verse 10 should be understood as another wife instead of the maidservant, not in addition to her. What about the maidservant's marital rights? Doesn't this indicate that she is indeed a wife deserving of sexual rights? While this interpretation is reflected in several English Bible translations, the word ona, found only once in the entire Hebrew Bible, translated as marital rights in the English Standard Version, does not mean conjugal rights. We know this because, as Tim Hegg explains, doctrines from other Near Eastern cultures, such as those found in the Akkadian language, have similar laws with this wording: food, clothing, and oil, or food, clothing, and shelter. The Hebrew word ona could easily be translated, or could easily be a cognate to the Akkadian term used for oil or shelter. Thus, the passage's meaning is simply this. If after purchasing the maidservant for a bride, the master decides not to marry her, but instead marries someone else, then he must still provide for her basic needs, food, clothing, and shelter, or oil. If he fails to provide for her, she is to be set free without the need to pay any redemption price. Again, the text does not indicate polygamy. So, what are your thoughts on this commentary?
Would he still have a right, or would she still have the right to demand children? I guess that's the question.
I don't think that is a right necessarily. If you're married, then you would still have the right for conjugal rights. But if you're not married to her and just providing for her
Right,
needs, you would not. That would not be even on the table. I wouldn't guess.
right. But if you were married, you know, women were lesser without children.
I think that valued more. I mean, certainly not just in Hebrew culture, but across. Think of King Henry VIII. He if he didn't get his son, he had to either divorce her or chop her head off.
Right, but he was convinced, and rightly so, that he was cursed by God not to have male child lips. But yes, but women were lesser. We look at Hannah in the Bible, right? That the other wife had children and she didn't, and her adversary vexed her sore because she was a mama to him.
Well, and we can see the rivalry between
Sarah and Hagar.
Sarah and Hagar, Rachel and Leah.
It is really kind of
I think it's pouring down again. Sounds very wild outside. All right, the Torah of theft. If while breaking in, the thief is discovered and he's struck and dies, as if he has no blood, what JPCT says. It's not considered murder. It's a thief considered dead from the start. The thief has come to acknowledgement that if the owner of the property were to stand up against him, the owner would kill him, the thief. But there's a specific issue here, though, is because it also says that the son shone on him, if he has blood. In other words, it would be murder to kill him. So what are the differences between those two?
If you could tell who he is.
You can tell who he is, and your assumption is you can't tell who he is when it's dark. When it's light, though, if he's a thief, he's not that can tell you he's not coming to kill you. Is that how you'd know that he's not coming to kill you? If he's an armed thief, you can't really.
He could still be going to kill you even in the light.
Right. So I think
Did
that
he come into your house or did he come into your house? Because he could steal from you without coming into your house.
if it comes into your house. This 22 verse 1 is about in your house at night. 22 verse 2 seems like it's in the house in daylight.
Or does he just come to steal from you?
It's called breaking in. So in 22 verse 1. So I think the context continues to while breaking in, if the sun shone upon him while breaking in, it's as if he has blood. In other words, you can't just kill a thief who's breaking in.
You can kill one in the dark, but you can't kill one in the daylight. And is it because, like, when you think of people sneaking around and doing things in the dark, it's like they don't want to get caught. They're deliberately doing something that's a crime.
But in the dark, then basically their lives are already forfeit.
Yeah, but you don't have as much defense because you can't see. You know what I'm saying? It's like you could say you were trying to defend yourself because you didn't even know what the person was there, their intent or anything like that. It's in the dark, and why would you go after somebody in the dark except that you were there to hurt them?
Evil happens.
Yes, evil, right. Whereas in the daytime, it's
You
almost
could
like-
perhaps more figure out intent in the daytime, perhaps.
I'm not sure. I think
Yeah.
if the sun is shining on, if they're in my house, the sun's not on, right? But if they're outside, the
Well-
sun's on them. I'm saying, if they're in the house, there ain't no sun shining on them, but if they're outside, the sun's
What if
shining
you
on
have a
them.
sun lamp?
I don't need to kill someone if they're taking something from my yard, but if they come in the house, they're dead.
Yeah, that's Oklahoma.
Tennessee,
Not
I think-
America.
I think it's castle doctrine, pretty much.
Oklahoma for sure.
But if the sun is shining on them, they're outside.
Cece comments, she says, entering someone else's dwelling unannounced is generally seen as evil intent, I would think.
But maybe they're alluding to, there have been cases where people in the dark house get shot and it was someone who lived there or a relative coming in.
That is true.
You know, they didn't mean any harm, someone woke up in sleep, startled, heard it.
I think the other thing is during the daytime, you can see whether the guy has a weapon. You can't tell that at night.
Right, at night, you can't see it, especially back then, you couldn't see it at night.
I mean, if a guy comes in with a gun into my house, his odds aren't good.
But in the daytime, yeah, still, even though, I mean, certainly you can conceal a knife or conceal a firearm in the daytime. But you pretty much, I think the intent is not easily understood or easily visible in nighttime, where it might be in daytime, although
At the point of breaking in, day or night, usually
It's
they don't
not
have
good.
good intentions.
No. It's
And you don't have the luxury of the time to figure out what his intentions are.
the other part of this is the thief has to pay.
Mm,
And if he has no money, he's sold for his theft.
We don't get that anymore. The payback.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's wrong with our judicial system, like they can work, a lot of them, when they get towards their release, they can work and save up all this money, which I know they have to have that to get out, but there's never any compensation to the people that they have injured.
Mhm.
And I think they should make them pay when they, I've heard of people coming out and having thousands of dollars and,
In those cases, I think the regular midnight pay rate now is like 22 cents an hour.
And that's those who can get a job. Not everybody can get a.
Yeah, most county jails aren't offering jobs out to inmates. It's usually only at the federal prison levels.
Well, state prison has jobs available. Not everybody can get one. You have to be a certain, basically show yourself a good person to begin with, and at least not have a lot of write-ups recently. But even so, they've reduced basically those who don't work don't get even what they used to call gang pay. In other words, a certain amount of money to pay for incidentals like toothpaste and not cigarettes. Cigarettes are verboten. They're on the contraband list, but incidental like soap, shampoo, toothpaste, things like that. So if they're truly destitute, then the state will still pay them if they can prove they have no other income. They'll still give them something for their incidentals and such. But they used to get what, I mean, I'm not an expert in what the pay rate has gone down to, but it used to be somewhere around like $11 a month. It was pushed down to $9 and then $8. I think that's right. And then it's zero. Yeah, pretty much that. Your $8 is they don't charge necessarily discount at the commissary either. I mean, they seem like they charge a premium for things versus a discount.
Where you gonna go? You pay this or you don't have it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the company store kind of thing. Onclos, one of the early commentators around the turn of the century, so to speak, century between CE and BCE. Onclos adopted the view that if witnesses discovered the thief before the property owner came, when the property owner came against him, they warned him not to kill him. The owner was liable for him if he kills him. That's from Rashi's commentary. I meant turn of the century, about 100 CE is when Onclos was writing. The Torah is very specific about, at least it has one sentence about damages caused by a grazing animal, but as you might imagine, there's lots of commentary on that one sentence. It talks about the separate categories of damage to a place based on shin, which is the Hebrew word literally tooth here. So an animal eats. So the animal eats something essentially in private land, then the owner is responsible for that. If it's public land, maybe not so much, but the other part is regel, foot. So if the animal is eating things he shouldn't eat on land he shouldn't be eating them on, walking around knocking things over with his feet on land he shouldn't be on, then it's the owner of the animal is responsible. But if it's on public property and the damage is done by the animal, if the animal is doing animal things, then the owner is not responsible, what this commentary says. I think in Lawton, though, if your animal on public land destroys a sign because the animal's doing what animal's doing, you still probably have to be liable for that. But it's not necessarily what the sages understood this Torah to mean. Let's see. So law of Torah, Torah commentary. This is the Torah of borrowing. We kind of talked about where there's a this reads a little bit differently. I think Jim read this section. This reads a little bit differently in verse 14 here. His owner is with him; he shall not make restitution. If he was a renter, it came in return for his rental, meaning that the rental fee would cover the damage to it. So that has to be factored into the rental fee. Versus, I don't remember what exactly you said, Jim, but it read a little bit different than this one, I think. Do you remember what that was?
No, I can look it up.
No, that's okay.
We're at 22.
22:14, but Jim was reading from a different translation than what you have there. This commentary on Torah of the Bar, this is a case of my shovel. I should not have made it available if it wasn't able to stand ordinary usage. I don't know. I didn't know it was going to break. So, the Torah decrees that if the owner is working with the borrower is not responsible for any damage that may occur to the item.
Well, because you're there to sit there and say he didn't abuse it, or if he did abuse it, you okayed it by not saying anything.
Mm-hmm. Owner could say, that's not how you use that. It's how you use it.
How to misuse a shovel? No, you don't swing it over your head.
There is technique for shovel use.
Digging.
I wanted to ask a question about Matthew, where Jesus
Mhm.
told them to go get the coin out of the fish.
Yeah.
Why did he only just pay for one of the disciples? There were all the others, did they pay their own taxes? Why did he pick that?
Maybe that one coin covered all of them.
No.
No.
It appears to only cover him and Peter.
They're
Him and
big tax
Kepha.
for you, for me and you. I've always wondered about that one, like,
Maybe the other ones were someplace else. That was just Peter with me.
Well, it seems like they're all coming back together.
wouldn't a tax still be due? Everybody would need to pay the tax? Did they already pay theirs? I don't know, I just always.
Well, there's I'll say that there is one comment, one commentary side of it says that Yeshua's questioning about whether the son owes or not.
Yeah.
He is paying for the fishes for him and for Kepha or Peter, right? So he's paying for both of them with that coin. But it kind of indicates that neither he nor Peter actually owe the tax.
Right, I
Just
get
like-
that, I
Kind of
get
like,
that.
okay, just pay it.
Yep,
Keep them all.
I get that, yeah.
One view is that, in terms of, this is understood in today and back in Yeshua's time by the leadership, the Pharisees, that it's an annual fee. And but it seems that one of the sects of Judaism at the time did not think it was an annual fee. It was a once in your lifetime fee. The Essenes believed that it was once in your lifetime. And so if you've paid it once already, you're not due for it. So that would potentially cover if, whether it was actually owed because of belonging to, believing that was the correct methodology or correct way. But Yeshua says, so as not to offend them, I'll pay it for me and for you. But what about the other Talmudim? It doesn't really bring those up. So the timing of the, perhaps in terms of how old were the Talmudim? How old were the disciples? Because the temple tax is due, at least in the census, was due at what age?
30.
It was 20, I think. Yeah. You see the Levitical service going from different times, but I think the census tax was 20 years and older.
And so Peter would have been 20.
Peter was older than 20.
John was the younger one, but, okay.
So
Well,
how
that
old were
makes
they?
sense.
I don't know. Were they all younger than 20? It seems like Matthew would have been older
Right,
than
if he was
20.
tax collector.
Right. He wouldn't have been hired as a super youthful tax collector. Perhaps they weren't there with them. And I don't know the answer to your question because it doesn't really give us a lot of details in terms of
Yeah.
the whys.
I
They
wondered
were,
if there was any
yeah.
commentary on it.
the only commentary I've seen is on whether Yeshua owed it or not because of the potential
I don't think.
following the Essenes. Yeah. Or whether
Because he would
Peter-
have followed
Right.
the law.
Yeah, exactly.
so he doesn't think he owes it. So
Right.
does that mean it's not an annual requirement for Peter or not? That's the question, right? Because he doesn't owe it because he's the son, so he doesn't owe it.
Right.
But he seems to pay it. It seems to act as if Peter doesn't owe it either, which is odd. So what else?
I thought it was interesting having to go up the mountain and stuff. God was up there and his feet looked like it was on sapphire glass.
Mhm.
And I had not noticed that before. And the Ten Commandments were supposed to be kind of a sapphire glass, weren't they, originally when God wrote them with his finger? Or not?
I don't recall seeing
In
that.
stone, right?
Mhm.
Well,
In stone with his fingers, I think that's about all it said.
okay. But I did think it was interesting that God was standing on sapphire. I hadn't noticed that before.
Well, in other places, it talks about the sea of glass, other prophets do. So I wonder if it's the same thing.
It just seems very slippery.
But I think it's wet.
Well, what bothers you about it? I think some questions about the treatment of
The slaves.
slaves that are injured
Yeah.
seems kind of bothersome.
And I think the one thing about it is like the man, that like he has a wife, he can't, if he goes, he can't take that one, like, that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That just, we need to buy him back.
Yeah, the master's plan to get more money, right? He's going,
Yeah.
I'll sell you. Sure, I'll sell these to you. Yeah,
But I have a
bargain.
feeling- I have a feeling there was a set price for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 9 o'clock.
Is it?
We'll be done soon.
Yeah, we're almost done.
This is the end.
This is the last slide. Yeah. With whom or what can you relate? Any of the readings? I do kind of relate to Peter asking a question. ask one more question. Why do I not owe it? Why don't the other disciples not owe it? Or do they owe it?
Yeah.
We're not paying for them. They have to pay for themselves. I don't know.
Why did he pay for all of them?
What do these readings tell us about Elohim or Yeshua?
I think God is a God of order.
And I'm glad he like he came to fulfill and redeem the law, so we are not stuck here doing all of these things. I mean, I know some things we're keeping, but I'm glad I don't have to worry about slaves and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you were in like Ethiopia or somewhere else and you were a follower?
Yeah, I'm glad I'm here. Maybe your mindset would be different growing up in that whole thing. Because it didn't grow up in that. Just grateful he redeemed us from it. For sure.
What is the text telling us to do? Well, there are 51 mitzvot. It's a, say again?
To be just.
Mm-hmm. I think you can summarize it by doing right to
Yeah.
people.
But do
Even
right,
slaves.
yeah, but I feel like I can follow a law and be grumbling underneath. Or I can like, you know what, I am so glad to follow this. Like there are things like, Lord, I want to live holy. I see a beauty in it. Whereas some people are like, oh, I gotta do all these do's and don'ts, you know. I see it as an honor and a privilege to follow and be obedient and live in righteousness and holiness. You know, like I said, I remember when I was younger, like, you can't do this because I'm like, and I'd just be grumbling underneath. Because it just seemed like a list of
Oh,
don't
so you said I can't do that? Well, that's what I'm going to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's kids.
Yeah. So I'm,
The truth is that every time we see a mitzvah or commandment, we can go back to passage tell us it's for our own good to do it. We may not think it's for our own good at the time, but ultimately it's for our own good if we do that.
but
But
I'd rather be obedient out of love and joy because
Yes.
I want to do it rather than be made to do
be forced to do those things, yeah. Mhm. What is a short summary of the text you could tell someone about it? Or at least the Torah text.
I think it basically came under the love your neighbor as yourself.
it. Yeah, you could, because it's being right and just about.
Treat your servants well.
And animals and things that you have that damage other people, you fix it and make it right.
Mhm.
If your ox is in the habit of goring,
The what?
Or you
if your
have-
ox is in the habit of goring,
Yeah, all right.
Well, and I would say, if you've got a
if
dog
your
that's
pit bull is in the habit of biting
has a
children,
biting issue,
You're
you
right.
need to put it down.
you are
Yeah.
responsible for that
Or
dog.
at
That
least
did
make
happen
sure
to us.
it's inside the fence and your fence has controls, right?
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
And then if someone comes in the fence, that's their problem, as long as the dog stays in.
You've got to keep the dog under control so you're not allowing it to be a public
Actually, I
nuisance.
I agree, we have neighbors that just let their dog roam the neighborhood
We do too.
and use the potty on your lawn, and I don't look upon those neighbors very favorably. Because they
Nope.
don't keep their livestock or their dog in their own yard.
Yeah.
Actually, one of my
They don't
daughters,
wanna do that.
one of the neighbors, pit bull came after us.
Oh.
If Monique hadn't been standing at the door and opened it so that Molly and I could run in, he would have gotten us.
Wow.
And so I told the neighbor, I said, I said, next time your dog is dead,
Yeah.
you've been warned. Hasn't gotten out since.
Well, be careful in that if the dog is coming after you, it's one thing. If it's coming after your dog, it's not really something you can necessarily use deadly
It
force
has
on.
been known to, well, it had pinned a bunch of neighbors on the porches. It's killed 5 or 6 cats in the neighborhood. It has a reputation.
Well, if you do have to do that, be the first to call 911 and let them know that you've had a Purposeful discharge of a firearm.
Yes, which I really didn't want to do, but yes.
Right.
But we're not supposed to be that neighbor, right? We're supposed to be the neighbor that says, I keep my dog in my yard,
Yes.
right? I
Mhm.
keep my dog on the leash if I need to have the dog on the leash.
My dog is
right?
wagging at you because he
We're
loves you.
supposed to be a good testimony with the way
Yes.
that we take care of our stuff, even our animals.
Yes, that's correct. All right. Well, let's close. We thank you for allowing us to study your word. Thank you for the freedom to do that. In Yeshua's name, we thank you. Amen.
Amen. Get out there.
Getting your comments
Shower.
before it rains again.
Yeah, I think this. I hear.